right, welcome everybody. Season 1, episode 21, we got there. Now, there's a poll on my Twitter. Here's the page for you if you are not familiar with it. This is where I run polls and this is where I announce streams and stuff like that. It's always in the description for every video. And we got a little bit of work to do today, which is still some modeling because I'd like to finish the one leg. Then we have several options, and this has got 1 day running. So I know what I'm doing today, which is we are gonna fix this foot because I would like to have the full chain working before we get the rest going. Then our options will be to actually finish the rig, like doing the containering, adding all of the published documents, the published controls for the containers, and what else? There's a bunch of stuff that we probably need to do, and that's maybe 1 or 2 hours worth of work, I guess. Duplicating the leg, talking a little bit about symmetry and choices like that. So it's not bad stuff, and there's a few interesting things we can talk about. But after that, we have some choices. So one of them is, well, at some point we got to talk about how the Maya graphs work in general terms and in more specific terms to evaluation. For episode 20, I've published a long intro video where I also discuss constraints and how to make them acyclic, and there's a little bit of graph talk in there, which I think is interesting, at least it's to me. Now, the guides, the way I've been doing it, I've been talking about tracking what you're doing with the guide, what nodes you want to delete, what plugs need to be swapped, and how to track them with messages. The outcome of that is that basically and this is true for most rigs that grow to a certain complexity, you need some script, you need some tooling or instrumentation, whatever you want to call it, for that stuff to be truly useful. And that's some scripting. Now, the thing with the scripting side of scripting videos, or the scripting side of this process, is that I'd like it not to be a requirement, not at this point at least, which should be doable for the guides. I mean, you can do the cleanup manually or you can automate it. There's some theory that's probably still left to go, and then eventually we'll close up with explaining something about optimization, and all of these things will need to be touched on in the next few streams. And I don't know how many we have to end the season, probably 5 or 6 or something like that, to cover what I just mentioned. So I think we need a break from modeling, so I put a poll on Twitter for what do you want the next couple episodes to do, because everything I've mentioned in so far is kind of interchangeable. How my graph works, finish the rig, completely finish it for reals. Theory, which is probably not going to be mathematics. I think we're good with what we need between season 1 and the pilot season, or tooling scripting. And a little bit surprising, I was expecting the Maya graphs to pull ahead of everything. But surprisingly enough, tooling seems to be winning in so far. Now, my Patreon is up. I don't think I've ever mentioned it on stream. Occasionally there's some backgrounds with the link. I will be, this is not an announcement video, I will do something like that, but eventually, soon enough, I was hoping for last month, but probably this month, I will be doing something for my patrons. But don't worry, the stream remains free. Everything related to the stream and necessary to follow it does stay free. I have no intention of that interfering. So, with all of that said, let's fix this foot. And there's some work to be done to clean up, maybe some names and stuff like that. We got the up vectoring to place the knee guide working. We got the guide for the foot in good state. That was already the case before. So this should be changing the angle. Might or might not. So we have some fixing to do possibly. But after that, we should have the full leg, which means it should be trivial, thanks to how we componentize and connect things to mirror it for the other side. And we can move on to more interesting topics than modeling the rig. So as usual, chat, please help me out if anything isn't clear, or if you think this should like take some slight bend in some direction, let me know. Otherwise, what I'm gonna do now, and about to flash the screen white, watch your eyes because I need to bring up mischief, and by default I did not change it before the stream. By default it's a blinding white. Okay, we're good. So what we need to figure out is what we need for this foot to work, and possibly fix a bunch of stuff. Now the start matrix is what we're receiving from the leg. That seems to be right. We probably want to add leg output, start matrix, okay. See, that's interesting. Start matrix and tarsi length. Let's have a look. So that might explain chain end. Is that connected? Now, is everything pinned? First and foremost. Yeah, something was not pinned. Now everything is. Is that chain end actually receiving anything interesting? It is receiving something, which Maya, as usual, has decided to teleport to the far right. So it is receiving from the deformed chain, which, fair enough. I don't think we're graphing that, so it might be a good time to do that. This is our blending, so we're receiving the FK and the IK chains, and then we are using the angles from the IK and the various items and everything to blend straight up into the deformed chain. Now, leg output. Okay, that seems to be right. We want to add that to our master graph here, definitely. That is definitely worth of graphing. I would like it to be at breadth 1. And if you zero these out, you might see all your connections disappear, so be careful with that instead of using the usual zero and expand trick when you deal with your master graph. If you don't want nasty surprises. So there's stuff that was not in our master graph, which is okay. That shouldn't be too big of a deal. Let's grab the inputs of the stuff we've added. There's a lot of stuff that we did not have in the master graph. That's okay. These are all the blends, and we were doing them in a separate graph. Let's bring them back in. So this is basically our blend. This seems familiar. This is what I would expect. So I am not reeling in shock at our findings just yet. We so all need a break from noodling, don't we? So, okay. Now this is the leg FK reframed, so I would expect this stuff to be something that I can comfortably pin where it is, and either connections to go straight to the next set of nodes, or at the most get me one more item in between. So that seems pretty good. This is what I would expect. Like flow wise, you learn, like once you do enough noodling, you learn to develop a bit of an instinct for recognizing whether the shape of a graph, especially if you always organize things the same way, which is never a bad idea. You start recognizing the shape of the graph, at least getting hints about whether it's right or not. So this is the anim parameters for the leg. Are we interested in that? FKIK blend, yes, that seems reasonable. Right now, because we're in guide mode, the FK is being driven by the IK, which is also okay. And then we have a couple more items that we want to make sure. So this is another blend. finally, the controls for the FK are starting to come in at this depth. So the hierarchy for these items is in the control for the leg. That is good. That seems so good and proper. And I reckon that these will probably get us our last set of nodes. Let's go at depth 2. Now the time we don't care to see in the master graph. We do not care for this random shape. And this seems to be the last of it. Cool. This leg control doesn't have anything above it, I would expect. Sorry, anything upstream of it. Like I wouldn't expect it to be receiving from anything. It's buffer would, and I expect to find it like somewhere under here. Or maybe not yet. So let's pin those as well. Because this is where the buffer, the FKO2 buffer, will be receiving from the guide, maybe? Yeah. Yes. Not from the guide, we're receiving from the IK, and the IK is receiving from the guide. We're still good. This is still making sense. Will be more than a bit of a bother if it didn't at this point. Pin these, okay. And there's bound to be a buffer for these that would also be connected to something. All right. Probably could have done this quicker if I had just brought in everything at depth 5 or 6 or something like that right away. I don't find it to be a bad exercise once in a while. Like we're sort of resurrecting something that we hadn't been using for a bit. It's never a bad idea to progressively go upstream of your graph and figure out what is going on. Now, there seems to be something that might be a cycle here. No, that's the guide. It's receiving from here. The two parameters. Nah, we're okay. We are okay. So these are the two parameters, and they're receiving from a bunch of things. I imagine this is for the leg, yes. And this is all leg, so our componentization seems to be in good shape still. So the two parameters are, the way we're doing them is basically tracking everything in the guide and so on. They're always gonna, like, they should always be downstream of everything, because what this is it's used for tracking things. So it shouldn't be driving something else. We might hack something in and out once in a while, but eventually you want to fix it. So this is the new stretch for all of our leg, including the guide. And we should be good to move forward. There is something that is foot input. So tarsi length is inheriting. Sorry, not inheriting, is being driven directly. We say that we're okay with this shortcut where the config is something can go straight into something else without going through an output. That's the kind of thing that an optimizer would normally go through the output, and then you would have a component optimizer to suppress constant relationships. We'll discuss that later on. So, what do we need to do next? Start matrix is getting its stuff from the joints, which is not necessarily bad. Sorry. Now, that was one of my daughter's toys. I don't know if the microphone picked it up. And, okay. Sorry, that distracted me for a second, because it's always funny. Like, that's basically become the soundtrack to our lives. What we want to do now is, the reason this is funky is that before these transform, like the parent of these would have been inheriting from the word or from these, so it would have been properly aligned like that. Now that we have connected the joint in here, it is inheriting something that's oriented this way. So if you look at the y-axis, it's gone from being here to being here. There's this much angle that's been added, which means that instead of this reasonable small angle, we have all of that added in. And it looks like, if you look at the angle slide, let me bring up, because this is another thing where it's useful to develop an intuition for the geometry of what you're doing. So if we look at the y as it was in the word and the y of the transform that we're inheriting from, we got, please give me red, we want this angle here. Sorry, we have this angle here. If we look at the y here and this foot thingy here, and where this chain ends up, in fact, we don't even particularly need to indicate the word here. So let's say that this is our frame and where we want it, and we look at our chain here. There seems to be, you know, a strong similarity. There should be identity, if what I think is true, between these two angles. So confirms our hypothesis probably. Let's go and fix it. Now, what are we controlling? The tarsi buffer should be ankle space. Oh, okay, there you go. So we're spacing the ankle. Come on. We're spacing the ankle here. And you can see that it's a line down this. And the buffer itself is receiving the tarsi angle from the foot roll, which is correct. So if this was a straight up IK setup with word alignment, you could get the rotation from these and use it, and you will be good to go. Now, because we have the IK driving everything, not that I've done anything meaningful, but let me save. We can test this idea pretty easily. So foot start matrix, whatever, instead of getting the start matrix, we should be able, come on. We should be able to put this as an identity matrix. So this is receiving a matrix. I would like this to be an identity. So and if you don't remember, an identity matrix is one that has no effect. And yeah, there you go. So I probably should not have undone the translation, in fact. And the attribute editor is not updating the already undo, which is one of its known and not terribly useful features. So we are slightly off. We might need to have a look at that. But by resetting the diagonal here, I've basically reset the rotation of these metrics, and the last row here is the translation, which we do want to keep. So this ankle space is now word align, and this tarsi is sorry. Let's disconnect rotate and scale, and let's get just the translate from where we were getting it before and verify these. I only want to check the foot roll at this point. I don't care all that much for some extreme animation. I would like to just delete this bunch of keys. Yeah, that's getting a bit funky because it's the leg is in guide mode. And it's shortening the joint, which is not what I would expect though, because no, actually this is what I would expect. And there's also something funky going on. So when you undo and redo and you see those jumps, don't panic just yet. Play with the timeline, because very often if there's not enough animated parameters and your rig is complex enough, the evaluation might have a tough time resolving those things. It is possible that our error is in reading the angle, or in outputting the angle. I'm wondering how slow this trim is going to be and if it's one that I should probably redo, but let's keep soldering on. I was hoping this would have been more immediate. And let me see that. Yeah, the response of this is what I would expect. It's guiding the foot, which is good. So there's a rest property here that we need to figure out. The rest angle of this is basically what we will want our tarsi to start from, and then we add what comes in from the foot roll and all of that stuff. It might be a little bit of reverse engineering because we haven't touched this part of the foot in a while. The toe angle is what is driving this rotation. So the toe angle is, and we can verify that as well, the toe angle is inevitably gonna be what we need to fix. So no, it's not. I am completely wrong on that. Sorry, I forgot the name of our own stuff. The tarsi angle is what I meant, which will make sense. So the angle between here, the toe angle, seems to be more or less correct, but again, we'll need to check. Tarsi angle. Let's see. This is the buffers. Okay, so I suspect that this is a constant. There you go. That would explain the behavior. Yeah, so this is right now, this is a constant because we're just posing the thing, and we might have connected to something else before, but we don't now. So that's good. That is basically the rest angle, and that's what we need to fix. Okay, we're getting somewhere. We are so, don't worry, we're so gonna get a break from modeling soon. Now, we are guiding this thing into submission. And the default of this object here, this buffer, is basically gonna be the word space, or rather the ankle space. So the ankle space is something that we could get from the FK and the IK. One way to do it and keeping the blend consistent, so we'll need to add it to the leg, will be to add a word equivalent as an ankle rotation that is word equivalent to the end of the FK chain. We'll probably do just that, in fact, and fix our output so that it's easy to blend between FK and IK. But it's not a problem yet, so we can assume word line for now and figure out the angle between, so tarsi, yes, tarsi buffer, the angle between this and that. So the tarsi angle is not receiving from the foot roll for now. We definitely do need to fix that. Now when I'm doing that, yeah, that is altering the guide. It's a little bit tricky to do a fix like this while we also have a working guide going. I mean, in a way, it's kind of a testament to the quality of our... Oh, no, this is not really the guide. It's just the diagnostics. Huh. So we're not limiting the ankle here. Leg output. Joint of free. So these... I have to admit to being a little bit surprised about this happening. Because this is not moving the item that I would expect to have the guide, but we will need to check that as well. Some of the... we probably interfered with how we're limiting things. So let's have a look at that actually. config parameters, tibia length. We are obtaining the tibia length from the distance. I reckon we're using the distance of these and that space. So we do have the knee, and the other one is the ankle word, which is getting the rolled ankle. And the rolled ankle is not being limited. So fair enough. That's okay. We know what is going on. Because we have replaced how we drive some of this buffering, the length is basically gonna change together with our ankle. That's part of the guide acting. We can deal with that. Tarsi angle. So we should have a tarsi angle output from our foot. So chat, let me know if this is making sense to you, please, like what we're doing and why. But this should be the last bit that we need to track. So word ankle, leg global, don't want the guide here. Roll mechanics, there you go. Green screen is still fine, cool. So word matrix, rolled angle. I would expect these to be correct. And it's just disconnected because we might have moved some of this stuff from one side to another. Tarsi angle here should be the angle between this, which Tarsian seems correct, and probably the word. So yes, and Z word. So that's okay. We might need to readjust this vector to choose. So this is measuring literally the angle between Z and the vector coming in from the tarsi end. So from this inward space to this, which should give us this angle. Let's bring up Mischief for a second here. My expectation of what this graph is doing is that one of these two is positive Z, so it's gonna be that, and the other one coming from the word space of a subtraction, which should be from here to here, is gonna be something like that. And then that node, the rolled angle here, I expect to give me these, and I'll put it in the tarsi angle, and that's what I want to hook up. Ooh, ever so dangerous channel box. The hotbox. It's like when you're switching between applications, like between alt and space, you can do some very real damage. So what I want is 1 and 2. Let's get ourselves a new window for these two. Like global output. It was a good idea to actually change our naming convention slightly. It was a very good idea. It's so much easier to know what is what. Otherwise it would have been called just output and input, which in this case might be fine, but when you have multiples, it starts getting a little bit trickier. Tarsi angle and tarsi angle here. There you go. So that is now aligned. We like that. Now my expectation is that, whoa, that's coming to camera. This would work. Yeah, seems to be working here. I wouldn't expect it to do a great job if I start rotating the ankle like that. Yeah, I would expect that to be all kind of wonky because we're sort of assuming, making some assumptions about the word space of these. Now let's pin the law. Now these should start making more sense, having more of an effect. That's good, because it's getting us our angle the way we want it. Now, don't be fooled just yet by this diagnostic thingy not working. Sorry for that. I just realized I got water, but I left it in the kitchen. Yes. Now we're good with that. Next, let's make sure that the toe angle also works. Tarsi angle is connected, toe angle is not. So as we move some of the parameters or something like that, we lost those connections or we never made them. It doesn't matter. The digging is, the recap kind of thing, but it seems that we have the full guide responding now. That's my daughter still getting excited. So, when I undid the keyframing. Before, when we had that thing spazzing out, it's because I undid keyframes. That can definitely, I had deleted the keyframes there. That can definitely throw your graph for a loop. So let's get rid of those. So it's staying pinned, obviously, because we're in this dynamic mode where things are resized based on position of our stuff. You see the leg changing in nature, like the lengths and all of that. It's a feature, not a bug. In this case, it means that all our measurements and all our assumptions work. It just happens to interfere a little bit with what you see. Now, what else have we got here? I would expect these to alter the lengths, and yeah, seems to be working fine, and the angles. There might need to be some polish happening here and there. So the positioning of this part of the foot is also correct, and then that is affecting what I expect it to affect. Now, tarsi length. Do I want to add more diagnostic? We don't really care for more diagnostic. In fact, we don't really care all that much about this diagnostic in general. It's just sort of useful to have it, so long as it's not confusing. What time is it? We're about half an hour in. Yeah, we could fix that, and short episode just fixing the foot, and we'll be happy with what we have, I guess. And then we can start like looking at what we did here with how, the guide is behaving the way we want it. So we're good with this. I mean, it means that you can literally move everything around, and imagine having the geometry. We'll have to bring it in because that gives these puts it more into perspective. You have the geometry, you move your bits where you want them to be in respect to the geometry. And if you look at our actual controls, what is happening is, these are still all zeros, these are still all zeros. We're moving the buffers around and all of that. Once you delete the guide and swap a few plugs, that is your final rig, basically. So, I like where this is at. I don't know, I'm torn on about whether I want to keep these joints here. They seem more confusing than anything else, but once you hide the guides away, so this is the leg global guide. Sorry, once you hide the diagnostics for, like, let's say that we hide the roll here, they could be kind of useful. And what I've done is hidden the joints of the leg global, so we might have reason to want toe length, so let's put it in. It's quicker to do it than to argue about whether we should do it or not. We can always remove it later on. You definitely don't want this to go negative. There's no point in that. I said it many times before, use soft min and soft max if you can, like I'm just doing things a little bit quicker. And default for these will be whatever. Doesn't really matter all that much. So we now have the toe length. And the way we shape things, I would expect, let's have a look at that item. Toe to tarsi. So we've done this in word space, which is okay. That is the guide. So this is, for me, this is the master graph for the rig. Getting the guide in it, like while you're troubleshooting, and we do have some of it, is okay. But eventually be ready to clean it up and use separate tabs for that, in my opinion. Because otherwise, like once you do, you know, due diligence, and you remove the guide, you start finding some odd gaps in there. So that's why I don't have the leg global guide in there. But we should be able to pretty trivially, come on, do my bidding. No, don't do my bidding, it's okay. Tarsi N. So this is receiving its translate from something, possibly config parameter. So toe length, to change the toe length here, that's kind of funky a little bit. So, oh, the toe length is being driven. Sorry, I'm making sure that I understand what is going on here, and I think I do. So we got the word space, the heel, the roll tip, the tarsi, and these. Now these controls are separate, and that's good, and they are determined. I bet you that what is happening is that we've done the right thing, and this is actually, these items are guiding, let's have a look, are guiding our toe length. And by the way, I mentioned this before, if, like, it can get a bit awkward if you select something in the node editor and then you, let me do that, and then you select something in the viewport, like your selection is fine, but what is it, the other way around? Yeah, if you select something in the viewport or in the outliner and then you select something in the node editor, the way the sync works, it will undo all of your selections. It's another thing to watch out for. Probably another Autodesk if you're listening moment. Yeah, these syncs should not reset every other selection in the application, please. So I bet you that, oh, see, I just did it again, that this is gonna be all good and proper. Yes, it is very good actually. I am proud of us. So we have the guide item here and the one for the tarsi, and the distance between the two is informing the toe length. Eventually, like we had this config here because we didn't have a guide, so we needed some constants, and we decided to hook the guide straight into that. If you have something that you're confident is going to remain reliable and fully guidable, you can often do away with a lot of this configuration stuff, and they just become constants in the graph. Or you can do it this way if you want a sort of a panel item that represents your constants. Hopefully we're still making sense. Now, I reckon that for the, like we say that it's acceptable to take this shortcut. I should probably shortcut these again, because they will be equivalent. So clean these up, get me just the two. And let's connect the toe length here to the toe length there. And lastly, we will want to take this last joint. So diagnostic toe, some of our names are like, I don't know, they're funny to me, but it is what they are. And we're operating down what axis? The Z here. So I would expect the toe length to go into the translate Z and be good. There you go. Definitely a save moment. It's been there for a while. So somebody was saying, I don't seem to have the selection reset issue in Maya 2018. Maybe Autodesk were listening. I hope so. That would be great. There's a bunch of stuff that I'm pretty positive was fixed in 2018, and we do have a license. The reason I'm not using 2018 is because I've done most of the season in 2017, and even if you save ASCII, 2018 has a really nice improvement to it actually that compacts the scenes a lot, but that can affect how the attributes are stored, I believe. So there is a slight risk of incompatibility. Whereas I know that with the use we'll be making and stuff, this is almost guaranteed to work in 2016 and 2016 and a half. So for this season, you know, I'm supporting all versions. We will move to 2018 in the next season for sure, because there's a lot of stuff in it that's good stuff. And yeah, it's the usual thing, like where you go like, okay, if you've done everything right, this is very anticlimactic, but I think that we are good to go. Like the foot has been fixed. So if I move these, imagine the geometry in there, you know, the entire thing has just become guidable. So I mean, this is pretty decent. I don't know how many hours I spent on this at this point. I mean, without the stream, this is probably, like all of these is probably about a day of work, and you just got yourself a decent IKFK blending guide with foot roll, you know, no cycles, your own nifty little custom solver. So we're not doing bad actually. Now it's pretty early, but this is in a good place, and I might just make it a short stream. I don't want to mix subjects. And go as the next one, we can actually move to instrumenting these and writing something that removes the guide, and that's all that nice work for us. I don't want to start it now because it doesn't seem appropriate. We do need to add some parameters for the guiding, like visibility, because that will be nifty, and it makes our job less confusing as we go through these. It's a bit of, like, might be doing a little bit of house cleaning. Anyway, stream, if you got questions, ask them now. In the meantime, I'm gonna rename and move around a couple of things maybe, and if nothing is forthcoming, it doesn't need to be strictly about the foot, because it's not like it's a broad subject today. And if not, then I'm gonna call it. I am also gonna pin the entirety of my graph, because at this point it's in a decent enough place. It was already all pinned. Yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of happy with what we got here. We can finally move on to another subject for a bit. We actually also seem to have been relatively diligent, so there's not a lot to rename. I had left some stray nodes here to rename. No. There you go. We have one. There don't seem to be any questions forthcoming, so might call it here. Let's just rename our couple things. So this is a vector frame in SRT form, and this is in the leg guide. This is in the leg in general, actually. But do we use it for anything else is the question. Let's put it in the leg, and eventually it might become a stray node, and we'll delete it. So vector SRT. And oh, there is one question, and we will get to it. Now, this one, we were running a subtraction between the hip and the up vector. So this is our... Am I confusing something here? Up vector frame. Okay, just making sure. This is what we're using for the up vector of the guide. This is still not necessarily guide only, so we are gonna keep it named like that. Or not. Now let's make it obvious. I don't think we use it or need it for anything else. I've changed my mind. And this is the hip to up vector axis. So Lego guide, hip to up V. Sure. For now, we'll stick with that. Simple, explains what it is. All right, this is it for the node link because we have something working and it's, you know, it's conclusive. Now there's a question which is might be slightly off topic, but usually there will be some twisty segments in the leg. Would they be part of the leg component normally? I would say yes. I will get into that. I really need something meatier than a ball and legs rig to explain that. There's a bit of a kinesiology aspect to that question, which is if people not familiar with it, twist segments is basically the idea that if you do something like that with your control, so it's twisting, the expectation, actually let's, now that we can, okay, switching shortcuts mentally, the expectation will be that as you go down there and this is reorienting itself in some direction, you will want to, people say, extract the twist, so that whereas this has a fairly strong angle to it, let's actually use something that makes sense. So if your base axis is going that way and you have twisted the leg to that position, you have that angle, the expectation is that then you get a reduction of that angle going up, so that you get no angle here, a little bit of it here, more of it here, more of it again here, and you get a nice behavior going on. Now that is fundamentally incorrect and I'm not a fan of it. We're doing a ball and legs for many reasons. One of them is that it gives me a chance to just deal with things like guides and so on. Like adding a spine or adding a twist can get a little bit complicated. It blows up the size of the rig, which makes it a lot harder to explain the things that I wanted to get across, like in this season, the guides and how to manage your graph and then getting into parallel level and so on. But yes, normally something like this twist extraction and the twist distribution, which will be, you know, in the simplest of terms, you could look at these axes, you know, coming out of this leg projected on the tibia, you know, the axis of your ankle, look at the angle between, take that angle and distribute just that angle over, you know, this twist factor down the tibia. And you'll be doing okay. You'll be doing better than you will be doing without. Now, when you do something like that, here's the thing, and I'm hoping that I'm not confusing things here. I find it a little bit pointless because one of the reasons, like when you have linear skinning, one of the reasons that you cannot take this ankle and use it is because it might not have just that twist. It might be oriented all the way down here. So if you literally took the linear skinning and you blended this transform with the one that you have at the knee, and that is it, your geometry down here will be doing all kind of funky things, trying to get, you know, trying to blend between things that are parting from each other. A simple twist like that, however, is something that the linear skinning will just get you. Because if you have your ankle, and if you have something that is the division of the two, so have one joint here, have one joint here, have one here, and these are your tibia and femur, you know, going down, like I'm talking about planes here, I guess. You could have something in the middle here, literally averaging the angle, like dividing in half the angle of the second one, and you know, that's pretty much it for something that is under the same parent. You'd be good, you have something to help with the joint to get you that curvature. Now, if you then take the ankle, which might be twisted all kind of ways, and this is, bear in mind, I mean, there's limit to what you can do with simple twists and so on. If you projected these axes on the plane here, and you got these, which is what we're doing for the vector, and it's one of the reasons why I'm doing that. And then you get yourself these transforms. So the projected transform of the ankle in here, interpolating this angle linearly, like that, you know, reduce the amounts of that angle until it reaches 0. This is exactly what you can do with skinning. So if you project the ankle and you leave it to the skinning to interpolate by having the half weights and so on, you're pretty much done. So when you're after economy, don't do the whole thing where you have 5 transforms that, you know, do the job that skinning is perfectly well suited to do. Now, if you want to do a proper twist in a leg, it's actually a lot more interesting than that. Because what you need to do is actually run a spine. Well, this is the way I do it in a lot of cases. So you take something like these items in the leg and you build a spline out of it. You might be familiar with Bezier and stuff like that. And as that thing bends, the spline goes a little bit like that. So there's a few tricks to doing it. Now that does a few things for you. If you, hopefully this reads, I hope so. And when it straightens, you know, it'll be just pretty much the straight line of the two joints or close to. Now that creates a few things. A creates a change in length, which is actually correct, because when you compress your leg, it doesn't do, it's not a clapper motion, it's not a hinge or ball and legs is, but the human leg actually has a lot of work going on with the ligaments and the sacs of gel you have in it, making sure that the insides are lubricated, the bones don't grind, things are parted. So the real behavior of a leg is that as it bends, it doesn't bend like that. There's actually a lot of work that for the interaction between the bones makes it bend more like that. So you're going off axis a lot. And this is why, you know, in the Code of Freak description, I said at some point we need to get to kinesiology. So your difference is actually between, you need to gain length, these two. Now, once you do that, the other thing you do need to consider is that your twist actually in the shin, like the tibia twist, if you want, the second part of your leg, tibia and peroneus, like when they twist, they actually do a lot of work that is, A, it's non-linear, which again, you can sort of do with just linear skinning. If you blend the weights non-linearly, not just the straight average over the length. But if you want to really good behavior, what you get is that beside that non-linear distribution of the twist, it goes all the way up to the knee, where it actually has a fairly sharp kind of thing to get the correct behavior. And there's a tiny bit going in here. So it's done much better if you modulate across the spline. This is definitely not something that I'm gonna explain this season. But yes, you would definitely add it to the leg component. But if all you want is the standard run-of-the-mill cheap twist, you don't really need all that much. Like, good skinning will do it for you. That's the other thing about running spines or splines or whatever you want to call them across all limbs. And there's more to it, because this is really two splines or spines, whatever you want to call them. And they actually need to go back up in the gluteus so that the second part of your twist here actually reaches all the way in the buttocks and is properly distributed close to the back. And the same goes for the arm. People start the arm at the shoulder. That's a mistake. Your arm starts here. Like, this is your arm when you do something. It starts here from the clavicle. Anything you do around here as a ton of involvement, like the relationship between your pec and your humerus produces a lot of movement here. Your spine should only do your rib cage. Spine as in your spinal column of the body, not the spine as in a rigging primitive kind of spine. Does that make sense? It might have been a lot more than you bargained for. Now, don't feel dumb for the record, because like, it's pretty tricky stuff to get going. And like, not a lot of people do it. I don't want to say right, because it's not really about right or wrong, but a lot of people don't, like the staggering majority of people don't really take into consideration the kinesiology of the body when they set up components. And to be fair, like the isolation like we're doing it, which is, you know, kinesiologically wrong, it's fine for a ball and legs, and that's why I wanted to start from these and not from some funky biped with a glute. But it makes your work a lot harder because you start having a lot more interplay between spines and where the leg starts and where things end, and you know, and same for the arms and so on. Yeah, super cartoony characters. These applies to cartoony as well, for the record. Like I see people going absolutely crazy nuts when they need to do these, and they have their arm starting here, and the clavicle kind of works backwards from the arm into the spine, and then they have these really odd weights and rotating joints to get stuff, even on a cartoon, especially in a cartoony character which has extreme deformations. Trying to fix the pecs and the back and so on, your rib cage and your spinal column, especially in a cartoony character, are literally all that should go in your spine chest kind of rig. Like the lats, like the dorsal muscles here are actually connected to your arm. So your arm really is, and this is something for, I don't know why I'm going over this. I find this interesting, so I'm getting carried away. But your arm as an entity, if these are your bones for the arm, what it really boils down to, beside the fact, you know, that if you want proper twist, you need to do some work. And let's say that we're using blue for bones. There's getting the right relaxed poses and so on. And these applies to cartoony as well, for the record. The musculature part of it, so these needs to go and consider the clavicle. It's so hard to draw. I'm actually an okay draftman, but it's so hard to draw with a Wacom. Your pec basically goes and joins the humerus from your sternum. Your deltoids up here are also part of that movement. So there's this whole complex of things working through for you that are almost entirely driven by the arm. How they join to the chest is entirely passive, whereas your arm does all of the active contribution. Then in the back of it, there is an equivalent to the pec, which people often ignore, which is the latissimus dorsi, and that's that big ass muscle. It's one of the meatiest muscles in the body. If you look at bodybuilders, like they have scary size, like cow size, an entire cow kind of size latissimus. That is also part of the arm. That is your arm. It goes there, and then you have the brachialis, and you know you have the bicep doing the work that you need it to do. And then you get into really fine muscles like the flexor and tensor digititis and so on. But this is your arm. Your arm rig should be responsible for this chunk, because it's what drives that. Like your lats are responsible for these, for a lot of these, as are your pecs, as are your deltoids. I wouldn't go as far as including the traps, which are the muscles here, before you get to the actual neck part. Like this part here, the traps, I wouldn't really include them in the arm. Like we'll put them between the neck and the spine. And for cartoony, this solves a lot of stuff. Because for anything, really. I mean, if you go super realistic, you normally have something else taking care of these volumes in general. But your arm is the thing that's moving them. And so when you do an arm and you're spining it, so you're running the things that extract or impose the twist and so on, your actions are largely one spine here, another spine, I can do it, another spine here, and another spine here. Because when you do something like that, it goes all the way into there. And that's why the first part goes like that. When you do anything with your arm here, it bleeds all the way into the clavicle and the lats. And yeah. So we'll do that in you know, more extensively at some later stage. And I don't know if it's like, this is clear to me because I'm drawing it, so there's a mental picture for me, but this will be hidden behind the back. So this is, you know, ignoring the rib cage. This is stuff that goes on here. All right. Now I guess short episode, you know, made up in extra length with these. So I am calling it here. Thanks everybody for watching. If you're watching these on YouTube, you know, the next one will be whenever. If you're following the stream, I have no idea. You guys on YouTube, when you watch this stuff, if you're following the stream, I am not going to be on tomorrow. I'll be on the day after tomorrow. So thanks for watching and have a great day, everybody.